Now to a story on the effort to end child trafficking at the southern border. Many illegal migrants abuse our immigration system by lying and pretending to be family members of migrant children. Drug cartels and gangs also reportedly traffic and exploit migrant children to gain illegal entry into the country and seek asylum at our southern border. A new initiative, though, aims to mandate DNA testing at the border to deter fraud and child trafficking. This comes as the Biden administration reportedly ended all DNA familial testing at the border at the end of May.
U.S. Senator from Tennessee, Marsha Blackburn, is a co-sponsor of the End Child Trafficking Now Act. She joins us live. Senator, always good to see you. We appreciate you taking time for the viewers. Absolutely. Yes. Let's talk about that legislation that you introduced a few years back, reintroducing it now once again.
Yes.
If you could explain it, you talk about DNA, the border. How does all this exactly work? If you could dumb it down for us a little bit.
Yes, indeed. What we know is that about 30% of the children that present at the southern border are being trafficked. And there has been a DNA test that DHS would run. Takes about 45 minutes, and it would confirm whether or not a child does belong to the adults that are bringing that child along. Well, the Biden administration decided we didn't need to do this anymore. They were just going to look at paperwork. And what we have learned is that the cartels are forging documents and presenting birth certificates, passports, things that are fraudulent. Because of this, you have children that are being trafficked. Even the cartels are recycling children, which means they will attach a child to a couple of adults that are cartel members that they're trying to move into the country to get to a certain place. So the adults clear the processing. They send the child back to Mexico to be used again. And the adults go on their merry way wherever it is they're going to in the country. So this is an issue that needs to be dealt with. It is a matter of life and death for children. It is a matter of keeping children out of sex trafficking, human trafficking, labor gangs, being drug mules for some of these gangs like MS-13 gangs. So that is why I chose to pull that bill back out, reintroduce it, and push to get this testing back online. Now, if an adult refuses the DNA test, they're immediately deported. If they take the test and fail, it's a 10-year sentence. If the children stay, then DHS has to treat them as unaccompanied alien children, finding who is the next of kin, finding a relative that can care for these children. The other thing that the legislation does is to criminalize child recycling, because as we have worked on this issue and worked with Border Patrol, and as we hear from them, we realize there is no criminal penalty for recycling these children.
I think that those deterrences that you put in there are really great, and they should be punished very severely for doing this. It's horrible. It's despicable. But what you just brought up is that the Biden administration just decided to end DNA testing to make sure that it is a verified family member. Why on earth would his administration decide to do something like this?
Christina, one of the things we have seen repeatedly with this administration is their border policy is let's have an open border. And number two, they continue in pursuit of that goal. They continue to find ways to make illegal legal. They are trying to make it easier to illegally enter the country. And this is the reason it is so important that we put these safeguards in place and we continue to raise these issues of the humanitarian crisis and the danger to people that are crossing the border. Upwards of 80% of all the women and girls that are crossing the border, and bear in mind, the cartels are in charge of all of this, but these women are physically and sexually assaulted, and girls are sexually assaulted. Young girls have to be given pregnancy tests because of the rate of sexual assault that takes place as they're making this journey. Nobody comes in this country across that southern border without first going through the cartel. They are global organizations. You had people from 176 different countries that presented at the southern border for asylum claims.
Yeah, let me jump in. Senator, I don't mean to cut you off, just limited with time. And I kind of wanted to understand, one, how this would work, because the pushback that I would see is that if the parents are deceased or they cannot make this journey, but they want their child to have a better life, what happens with that if they have someone take them across the border? Their DNA is not going to match. What would be the future for that outcome?
What you would have is that child would be processed as an unaccompanied minor. That is what would happen. And if they're trying to get them to a next of kin, then it is up to the caseworkers with DHS to verify that.
All right. We appreciate the time. Senator Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee joining us live. Always good to see you, Senator. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Good to see you.
Absolutely. We also want to bring in Lauren Conlin. She is the host of the Lauren Interviews podcast live in the studio. Lauren, good to see you. Thank you so much for coming on. It seems that, each and every lawmaker is or seemingly trying to implement something to reform the immigration process. In this case here, it goes back to DNA testing, what you heard Senator Blackburn say. You're going to test the child and the adult with whom that child came into the border with. Is it a match? If it's not, then there's different routes. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, my heart is just breaking, but my blood is also boiling. The fact that the current administration does not recognize that the southern border is a crisis, and it's almost an epidemic here, human trafficking and child trafficking. So I think this is a really good step in the right direction, because if these men and women are criminalized, I mean, that essentially saves American children as well, because that's also an epidemic in America, human trafficking. It's not just, in Mexico over the border. So I commend Senator Blackburn, and I just wish that the Biden administration would wake up.
I wish so too, and I think what's so frustrating is we keep saying, just go to the border, just go see what's happening there. And I think that, unfortunately, a lot of Democrats think, oh, Republicans just don't want to allow migrants in. They don't want any sort of immigration, which isn't the case. Can you touch on that a little bit? Because we want people to have a better life in this country, but we don't want them to do it illegally where it's incredibly dangerous.
Right. I think that, to me, it's kind of similar to the gun laws, right? I mean, nobody wants to take guns. They just want stricter laws in place, which is the same for immigration. And when she said these stats, like 30% of these kids are trafficked, I mean, I was shocked. I had no idea.
Me neither. It's